I heard my sister laughing on the phone. She's so dumb she has no idea we've been stealing from her for 5 years. Mom cackled back, taking money from the family idiot is easy. Dad's voice added, she'll never figure it out, too stupid to check her accounts. I stayed silent in the next room, recording every word. But when they all walked into my lawyer's office for what they thought was a family meeting, they froze in terror. My name is Emily, and I used to believe that family meant everything. I thought the people who shared my blood would never betray me, never hurt me intentionally, and certainly never steal from me while laughing about it behind my back. I was wrong about a lot of things, but I was never wrong about my ability to plan the perfect revenge. It started on a Tuesday evening in March. I had come home early from my job at the Etherneting firm where I worked as a senior account manager. The house was quiet, or so I thought. My parents, Michael and Linda, had been letting me stay in their guest house behind the main property while I saved up for a down payment on my own place. At 28, I was doing well financially, but the housing at the net in our city was brutal, and I wanted to buy something substantial rather than settling for a starter home. My sister Jennifer, 2 years younger than me, still lived in the main house with our parents. She had never moved out, claiming she was saving money while working part-time at a local boutique. I always thought it was sweet how close our family was, how we all supported each other through thick and thin. I was such an idiot. I had forgotten my laptop charger in the main house and quietly let myself in through the back door to retrieve it. That's when I heard Jennifer's voice coming from the kitchen, bright and animated in the way it got when she was particularly pleased about something. She's so dumb she has no idea we've been stealing from her for 5 years. Jennifer was saying, and I could hear the grin in her voice. I froze in the hallway, my heart immediately starting to race. She couldn't be talking about me. There had to be some other explanation. But then I heard my mother's voice, that familiar cackle she made when she found something particularly amusing. Taking money from the family idiot is easy, Linda said, and I could hear her laughing. She just hands over her financial information whenever we ask. Oh, can you help me set up this account? Can you be my emergency contact for this investment? She practically begged us to have access to everything. My legs went weak. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to process what I was hearing. She'll never figure it out, too stupid to check her accounts, came my father's voice, Michael's deep tone carrying that same amused satisfaction. 28 years old and she still lets mommy and daddy handle her complicated finances. Best scam we ever pulled. The room started spinning. I felt like I was going to throw up, but I forced myself to stay quiet, to keep listening. I needed to hear everything. How much did we take this month? Jennifer asked. About $3,000 from her savings, Linda replied. Plus the usual $500 from her checking account. And Michael transferred another $2,000 from her investment account to our joint account. That's what, almost $11,000 this month? Jennifer sounded impressed. We're getting better at this. Practice makes perfect, Michael said. And the best part is, she's so grateful for our help. Just last week she thanked me for managing her finances so well and said she felt so secure knowing we were looking out for her. They all burst into laughter. I quietly pulled out my phone and started recording. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady, but I managed to capture the rest of their conversation. I almost feel bad sometimes, Jennifer said, though she didn't sound like she felt bad at all. She worked so hard at that job and she's always talking about saving up for a house. Please, Linda scoffed. She makes more money than all of us combined. She can afford to share a little with her family. Besides, what's she going to do with all that money anyway? Buy some fancy house and forget about us? Exactly, Michael agreed. This way, the money stays in the family. We're just redistributing the wealth. And funding my shopping habit, Jennifer added with a giggle. Those designer bags don't buy themselves. Or our vacation to Europe next month, Linda chimed in. Thanks to Emily's contributions, we can afford to go first class. My vision was starting to blur with tears, but I kept recording. I needed every word of this. We should probably slow down a bit, Michael said thoughtfully. We don't want to get too greedy and have her notice. Are you kidding? Jennifer laughed. She hasn't noticed anything for 5 years. She's not going to start paying attention now. Besides, she's so busy with work and that stupid boyfriend of hers. Ethan's not that bad, Linda said. He's fine, but he's just as clueless as she is, Jennifer replied. Perfect match, really. Two people who are too trusting for their own good. They talked for another 10 minutes about their upcoming vacation, the new car Linda wanted to buy, and Jennifer's plans to quit her job since they had such a reliable income source. Every word felt like a knife in my chest. Finally, I heard chairs scraping against the floor, and I quickly snuck back out through the rear door. I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes, just crying and listening to the recording over and over again. 5 years? They had been stealing from me for 5 years. I drove to my boyfriend Ethan's apartment in a daze. Ethan and I had been together for 2 years, and he was the kindest, most honest person I'd ever met. If anyone would know what to do, it would be him. "Emily, what's wrong?" he asked the moment he saw my face. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I played him the recording without saying a word. I watched his expression change from confusion to shock to pure rage. "Those bastards," he said when it finished. "Emily, this is theft. This is fraud. You need to call the police right now." "I can't," I said, still crying. "They're my family." "They're criminals," Ethan said firmly. "Family doesn't steal from family. Family doesn't laugh about betraying someone they're supposed to love." He was right, of course. But the thought of sending my parents and sister to jail made me feel sick. "Let me think about it," I said. "I need to figure out exactly how much they've taken first." That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the recording, hearing their laughter, remembering all the times they had helped me with my finances. Every birthday when they gave me expensive gifts, every vacation they somehow afforded on their modest incomes, every time Jennifer showed up with a new designer purse, it was all paid for with my money. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the entire day going through my financial records. What I found was worse than I had imagined. It wasn't just the monthly amounts they had mentioned. There were countless small withdrawals, transfers, and charges that I had never questioned because I trusted them completely. Money transferred to pay for family emergencies that never seemed to materialize into actual emergencies. Investment accounts that were supposed to be growing but somehow never increased in value. Credit cards that I had authorized them to use for groceries and household expenses that showed charges at high-end restaurants and luxury stores. By the end of the day, I had calculated that they had stolen approximately $847,000 from me over the past 5 years. Nearly $1 million. I sat staring at the number on my computer screen, feeling numb. That was my house. That was my future. That was my financial security, and they had taken it all while calling me an idiot behind my back. I called Ethan and asked him to come over. When I showed him the calculations, he went pale. "Emily, this isn't just theft," he said quietly. "This is grand larceny. This is felony fraud. This is enough money to put them away for decades." "I know," I said. "And I know exactly what I'm going to do about it." The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. I had to continue living behind their house, seeing them every day, pretending that nothing had changed. I had to smile when they asked how my savings were going, nod when they gave me financial advice, and thank them when they offered to help me with my accounts. Every morning felt like putting on a performance. I would wake up, shower, get dressed for work, and walk past the main house where my thieves lived. Sometimes I would see my mother watering her flowers that were probably paid for with my money, and she would wave cheerfully and ask about my day. I would wave back and tell her everything was fine, all while wanting to scream. The hardest part was dinner. 3 times a week, my family had dinner together, a tradition that went back to my childhood. I had always loved these dinners, the way we would sit around the table and share stories about our days, laugh at my father's terrible jokes, and plan weekend activities together. Now, sitting at that same table felt like torture. "Emily, you seem distracted lately," my mother said during one particularly difficult dinner. "Is everything okay at work?" "Just busy," I replied, cutting into the steak that was probably purchased with money stolen from my investment account. "We're working on a big campaign for a new client." "That's wonderful, honey," my father said. "Hard work pays off. Your dedication to your career is really admirable." The irony was suffocating. Here he was, praising my work ethic while he systematically stole the rewards of that work. Speaking of work, Jennifer chimed in, "I'm thinking about quitting my job at the boutique. I'm not really passionate about retail anymore." "What would you do instead?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. "Maybe take some time to figure out what I really want to do," she said with a shrug. "I've been saving up some money, so I can afford to take a break and explore my options." Saving up some money. My money. "That sounds like a great opportunity for self-discovery," my mother said supportively. "It's important to follow your dreams." I excused myself early that night, claiming I had work to finish. Back in the guest house, I sat on my couch and cried for an hour. These people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had turned me into their personal ATM, and they were so comfortable with their theft that they could sit across from me and talk about spending my money on their dreams. But I was busy. I was very, very busy. The acting became easier as the weeks went on, partly because I was channeling my energy into my investigation, and partly because I was discovering a side of myself I had never known existed. I had always been straightforward and honest in my dealings with people, sometimes to a fault. But now I was learning to be calculating, patient, and strategic. I started paying closer attention to their spending patterns. When Jennifer came home with shopping bags, I would casually ask about her purchases. When my parents mentioned going out to dinner, I would ask about the restaurant. I began to understand exactly how my stolen money was being spent, and it made me furious. One Saturday, I followed Jennifer to the shopping mall. I stayed far enough back that she wouldn't notice me, but close enough to see where she went and what she bought. In 3 hours, she spent over $2,000 at various stores: a new dress at Nordstrom, shoes at Jimmy Choo, a handbag at Coach, and jewelry at Tiffany. She paid for everything with credit cards that I was now certain were linked to my accounts. That same weekend, I discovered that my parents had booked a cruise for the following month. They mentioned it casually over Sunday brunch, talking about how excited they were to see the Mediterranean. The cruise was for 2 weeks and cost $15,000 for a balcony suite. That sounds expensive, I said carefully. We've been saving up for years, my father replied. Your mother deserves a nice vacation after all her hard work. My mother worked part-time at a local nonprofit and made maybe $25,000 a year. My father was semi-retired and did occasional consulting work that brought in perhaps $30,000 annually. There was no way they could afford a $15,000 cruise on their legitimate income. But they could afford it on mine. I started documenting everything. I kept a detailed journal of every conversation, every purchase I observed, every mention of money or expenses. I took photos of receipts left around the house, screenshots of their social media posts showing expensive meals and activities, and copies of any financial documents I could find. The most damaging evidence came from my father's home office. One evening, when they were all out at dinner, I let myself into the main house and went through his desk. What I found was a treasure trove of documentation showing the full extent of their theft. There were bank statements for accounts I didn't know existed, all with my name on them but with my parents listed as authorized users. There were investment documents with my forged signature, credit card statements for cards I had never applied for, and loan documents where my identity had been used as collateral. But the most shocking discovery was a handwritten notebook where my father had been keeping track of their theft. It was organized by month and year, with detailed entries showing exactly how much they had taken from each of my accounts and what they had spent it on. The notebook went back 5 years, confirming my initial calculations. According to my father's meticulous records, they had stolen exactly $847,327 from me over 5 years. I photographed every page of that notebook, my hands shaking as I turned the pages. The entries were written in my father's neat handwriting, with notes like Emily's checking, $800 for Jennifer's rent and investment account, $5,000 for cruise deposit and credit card, $1,200 for new living room furniture. They had been treating my money like their personal slush fund, and they had been keeping detailed records of every theft. The worst entries were the ones with personal comments. Emily asked about her investment performance today, told her the Ethernet was down was written next to a $10,000 withdrawal from my retirement account. Emily mentioned wanting to buy a house soon, need to slow down withdrawals for a few months was noted beside a month where they had only stolen $3,000 instead of their usual $8,000. They weren't just stealing from me. They were actively sabotaging my financial planning and lying to my face about it. I spent 3 hours in that office, photographing documents and making copies of anything that might be useful as evidence. By the time I left, I had enough documentation to prove theft, fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. But I wasn't done yet. The next phase of my investigation involved technology. Ethan had a friend who worked in cybersecurity, and he helped me install monitoring software on the main house's computer. The software was undetectable and would track all online banking activity, email communications, and internet searches. Within a week, I had captured dozens of online banking sessions where my parents accessed my accounts, transferred money, and made payments using my funds. I had copies of emails between my family members discussing their spending plans and strategies for avoiding detection. I even had browser history showing that they had researched how to forge signatures and whether financial power of attorney documents could be created without the principal's knowledge. The email exchanges were particularly damning. In one conversation between my parents, my mother wrote, "We should probably create a paper trail showing that Emily gave us permission to manage her accounts. Just in case she ever gets suspicious." My father replied, "Good idea. I'll draft something and backdate it." In another exchange, Jennifer had sent an email to both parents saying, "Can you guys increase my monthly allowance? I want to buy a new car, and $2,000 a month isn't enough to cover my expenses plus a car payment." My father responded, "We can bump it up to $3,000, but you need to be more careful about your spending. We don't want Emily noticing large irregular withdrawals." They had created an entire system for stealing from me, complete with budgets, allowances, and strategic planning. And they had documented all of it in writing. The final piece of evidence I needed was proof of their current financial situation. If they claimed they could pay back the money, I wanted to know exactly what assets they had and whether those assets had been purchased with my stolen funds. This required some creative investigation. I hired a private investigator named Rebecca Torres, who specialized in asset searches and financial investigations. Rebecca was able to determine the current value of my parents' house, their cars, their investment accounts, and any other significant assets. Her report showed that my family had a total net worth of approximately $890,000, most of which was tied up in their house and cars. But more importantly, she was able to trace the source of funds for most of their major purchases. The down payment on their house had come from a transfer from my savings account. Their cars had been purchased with loans that used my credit as collateral. Even their furniture and appliances had been bought with credit cards linked to my accounts. They had built their entire lifestyle on money stolen from me. Rebecca's investigation also revealed something I hadn't expected: they were already struggling to maintain their current lifestyle. Despite having access to my accounts, they were carrying significant debt on their personal credit cards and had missed several payments on their own obligations. They were living beyond their means even with the money they were stealing from me. This information was crucial for my legal strategy. It meant that even if they wanted to pay me back, they didn't have the resources to do so. Any restitution would require them to liquidate most of their assets and dramatically downsize their lifestyle. Armed with all of this evidence, I was ready to move forward with the legal proceedings. First, I hired a forensic accountant. Margaret Chen was recommended by a friend who worked in white-collar crime investigation, and she was exactly what I needed: thorough, discreet, and ruthless. I gave her access to all my financial records and asked her to document every single fraudulent transaction. "This is extensive," she said after reviewing everything. Whoever did this was very systematic. They knew exactly what they were doing. "They had 5 years to perfect their system," I replied. Margaret's report was devastating. She had tracked every stolen dollar, every forged signature, every unauthorized transfer. She had documentation showing that my family had used my personal information to open credit cards in my name, had forged my signature on investment documents, and had systematically drained my accounts while making it look like legitimate financial management. Next, I hired a lawyer. David Rodriguez was a partner at one of the most prestigious law firms in the city, and his specialty was financial crimes. He was expensive, but considering how much money I was trying to recover, the investment made sense. "Do you want to pursue this criminally or civilly?" he asked after reviewing Margaret's report. "Both," I said without hesitation. "That's going to be a very public, very messy process," he warned. "Are you prepared for that?" "They laughed about calling me an idiot," I said. "They called me too stupid to figure it out. Let's see how smart they think they are when they're in handcuffs." David smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "I like you already." While Margaret and David worked on the legal aspects, I focused on gathering evidence. I installed a small recording device in the main house, which was technically legal since I was a resident of the property. I documented every conversation I could about their financial situation, their spending habits, and their continued theft from my accounts. I also started keeping a detailed log of their behavior. Jennifer's new purchases, my parents' vacation plans, any mention of money or finances. I took pictures of receipts left around the house, documented expensive purchases, and even followed them to some of their shopping trips. My investigation took an unexpected turn when I discovered something that changed everything. While going through the financial documents I had photographed from my father's office, I found a series of papers that revealed the true scope of their betrayal. Hidden in a manila folder labeled tax documents were medical bills, my medical bills. 4 years ago, I had been in a car accident that required surgery and extensive physical therapy. My insurance had covered most of the costs, but there had been significant out-of-pocket expenses that I thought my parents had helped me pay. The truth was so much worse. According to the documents, my parents had filed a lawsuit against the other driver's insurance company on my behalf, claiming damages for lost wages, pain and suffering, and future medical expenses. They had convinced me to sign some insurance paperwork after the accident, but what I had actually signed were power of attorney documents giving them authority to handle legal matters on my behalf. The settlement had been for $185,000. I had never seen a penny of that money. When I asked about the lawsuit status months after the accident, they told me the case was still pending and that these things take years to resolve. My parents had used legitimate power of attorney documents that I had unknowingly signed to settle the claim and keep the entire $185,000 for themselves. According to the paperwork, the settlement had been reached 2 years ago, but they had told me the case was still ongoing. The settlement money had been deposited directly into an account that I had no knowledge of, and from there it had been used to pay for their European vacation the previous year, Jennifer's car, and various other luxury purchases. I sat in my car outside a coffee shop, staring at the settlement documents, feeling like I was going to be sick. This wasn't just theft anymore. This was identity theft, insurance fraud, and forgery. These were federal crimes that could result in decades in prison. But there was more. In the same folder, I found evidence that they had been having my financial mail redirected to a P.O. box they controlled. There were copies of bank statements, investment reports, and tax documents that I had never received. I discovered they had contacted each financial institution, claiming I had moved and providing the P.O. box as my new address. They had been intercepting critical financial documents for 2 years, which explained why I sometimes received incomplete statements or had to request duplicates of tax forms. The list was extensive: bank statements, investment reports, insurance documents, tax forms, and even correspondence from my employer's HR department about my 401k account. They had been systematically intercepting any mail that could reveal their theft or provide me with accurate information about my financial situation. My investigation had uncovered a criminal enterprise that went far beyond simple theft. They had created a sophisticated system of fraud that involved identity theft, mail fraud, insurance fraud, tax fraud, and systematic financial exploitation. The total amount they had stolen from me was now $1,032,327, the original $847,327 plus the $185,000 settlement. I called Ethan immediately and asked him to meet me. When I showed him the settlement documents and explained about the mail redirection, he was speechless. "Emily," he said finally, "this is way beyond anything I imagined. This isn't just family financial abuse. This is organized crime." "I know," I said. "And I'm going to make sure they pay for every single penny." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the times over the past few years when I had been confused about my finances. There had been discrepancies in my accounts that I couldn't explain, missing statements that never arrived, and investment performance that seemed inconsistent with Ethernet conditions. I had always assumed it was just the normal confusion that comes with managing multiple accounts and investments. I had trusted my parents when they told me that the Ethernets were volatile, that my investments were performing as expected, and that I shouldn't worry about the details as long as the overall trend was positive. Now I understood that every question I had asked had been a threat to their system. Every time I had wondered about a missing statement or a confusing account balance, they had scrambled to create explanations that would keep me from investigating further. I remembered a conversation from about a year ago when I had mentioned wanting to consolidate my accounts to make them easier to manage. My father had strongly discouraged this, saying that diversification was important, and that having accounts at multiple institutions was a smart financial strategy. At the time, I had thought he was being protective and wise. Now I realized he was protecting his ability to steal from me. I also remembered several occasions when I had tried to access my accounts online and had been told that my password was incorrect. When I called the banks to reset my passwords, I was told that the security questions had been changed recently. My parents had been changing my passwords and security questions to prevent me from accessing my own accounts. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how extensively they had manipulated my financial life. They had been intercepting my mail, changing my passwords, forging my signatures, filing fraudulent tax returns, and even settling legal claims in my name, all while maintaining the facade of loving, supportive family members who were helping me manage my finances. It was during one of these surveillance sessions that I overheard the conversation that sealed their fate. I was sitting in a coffee shop across from the jewelry store where Jennifer was shopping when I saw her come out with a bag from Tiffany & Company. She was on her phone, and as she walked past the window where I was sitting, I could hear her conversation. "I just bought the most gorgeous diamond earrings," she was saying. $4,000, but hey, it's not my money, right? She laughed at whatever the person on the other end said. "Of course it's from Emily's account. God, she's so stupid she actually thanked Dad yesterday for keeping her accounts organized. If she only knew he was organizing the money right into our pockets." More laughter. "We're thinking about buying a second house," she continued. "Something at the beach. We've taken enough from her over the years that we can afford a nice down payment. The best part is, she'll probably thank us for the family investment opportunity when we tell her about it." I recorded every word. That night, I called David. "I'm ready to move forward," I said. "I want to press charges, file the civil suit, and recover every penny they stole." "Are you absolutely certain?" he asked. "Once we start this process, there's no going back. Your relationship with your family will be over." "My relationship with my family ended the day they decided to steal from me and laugh about it," I replied. "Let's destroy them." David's plan was beautiful in its simplicity. He was going to invite my family to his office under the pretense of a family financial planning meeting. I had mentioned to my parents that I was thinking about making some changes to my financial arrangements and wanted to include them in the discussion since they had been so helpful over the years. "That's a wonderful idea, sweetheart," my mother had said when I brought it up. "We'd love to help you plan for your future." "Absolutely," my father agreed. We want to make sure you're making smart decisions with your money. Jennifer had been equally enthusiastic. It's so smart of you to include us, she said. We know how much you struggle with financial stuff. If they only knew. The meeting was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. David had arranged for a court reporter to be present, as well as a detective from the Financial Crimes Unit. Margaret would be there with her forensic accounting report, and I would be there with my recordings and 5 years' worth of documented evidence. I barely slept the night before. I kept thinking about how different my life could have been if I had never found out about their betrayal. I would have continued working and saving, never understanding why I couldn't seem to get ahead financially. I would have kept trusting them, keep asking for their help, keep thanking them for their support. I would have been their victim forever. But not anymore. I arrived at David's office 30 minutes early. The conference room was set up perfectly, a long table with chairs on one side for my family, and chairs on the other side for me, David, Margaret, and Detective Johnson. The court reporter was set up in the corner, and there were cameras positioned to record everything. Are you ready for this? David asked. I've been ready for months, I replied. My family arrived exactly on time. They were all dressed nicely, my parents in their best business attire, Jennifer in a new dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. They walked into the conference room chatting and laughing, completely relaxed and unsuspecting. Then they saw the other people in the room, and their expressions changed instantly. Emily, my father said slowly, what's going on here? Who are all these people? Please, have a seat, David said professionally. I'm David Rodriguez, Emily's attorney. This is Margaret Chen, forensic accountant, and Detective Johnson from the Financial Crimes Unit. We have some matters to discuss with you. I watched the color drain from their faces as they realized what was happening. Jennifer actually took a step backward toward the door, but Detective Johnson was already positioned there. I don't understand, my mother said, her voice shaking. Emily, what is this about? I looked at her for a long moment, remembering all the times she had hugged me and told me she loved me, all the times she had offered to help me with my finances, all the times she had asked about my savings and investments with fake concern in her voice. It's about the money, I said quietly. It's about the $847,000 you've stolen from me over the past 5 years. The silence in the room was deafening. That's ridiculous, my father said, but his voice was weak. We've never stolen anything from you. We've been helping you manage your finances. By transferring my money into your personal accounts? I asked. By using my credit cards for your personal expenses? By forging my signature on investment documents? Jennifer sat down heavily in one of the chairs, her face white as paper. I have recordings, I continued, pulling out my phone. Would you like to hear them? I played the recording from that first night, the one where they had called me an idiot and laughed about how easy it was to steal from me. I watched their faces as they heard their own voices, admitting to their crimes, joking about my stupidity. When the recording ended, my mother was crying. Emily, we can explain, she started. No explanations necessary, David interrupted. Mrs. Johnson, we have documented evidence of systematic financial fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny. The total amount stolen is $847,327.89, which constitutes multiple felony charges for each of you. He slid copies of Margaret's report across the table. This forensic accounting shows every fraudulent transaction, every forged signature, every unauthorized transfer. We have 5 years of documentation. My father picked up the report with shaking hands. As he flipped through the pages, his face went from pale to green. We also have surveillance footage of you making purchases with Emily's credit cards, Detective Johnson added. We have recordings of conversations where you discuss the theft. We have documentation of expensive purchases made immediately after money was transferred from Emily's accounts. This is a family matter, Jennifer said desperately. Emily, we're family. We can work this out between ourselves. I looked at her, remembering how she had laughed about buying designer bags with my money, how she had called me too stupid to figure out their scam. We stopped being family the day you decided to steal from me, I said. We stopped being family the day you called me an idiot behind my back. We stopped being family the day you chose greed over love. Emily, please, my mother begged. We'll pay it back. We'll pay back every penny. Just don't do this to us. With what money? I asked. The money you stole from me? The money you spent on vacations and designer clothes and expensive dinners? Where exactly are you going to get nearly $1 million? The truth was, I already knew they couldn't pay it back. Margaret had investigated their financial situation as part of her report. They had spent most of the money they had stolen, and what they hadn't spent was tied up in assets that would need to be liquidated. We have some options, David said, his voice coldly professional. You can agree to full restitution, which would require you to liquidate all assets purchased with stolen funds, surrender any remaining stolen money, and enter into a payment plan for the balance. In exchange, Emily would consider not pursuing the maximum criminal charges. What kind of payment plan? My father asked. The remaining balance after asset liquidation would be approximately $490,000, Margaret said. At a reasonable payment plan, you'd be looking at payments of about $3,200 per month for the next 15 years. Jennifer laughed, but it was a desperate, hysterical sound. We don't have $3,200 a month. We don't have $320 a month. We spent the money, Emily. It's gone. Then you'll go to prison, Detective Johnson said matter-of-factly. Financial fraud of this magnitude carries a sentence of up to 20 years per count. We have enough evidence to charge each of you with multiple counts. Emily, my mother said, reaching across the table toward me. You can't send your own family to prison. We raised you. We love you. I looked at her hand reaching for mine and felt nothing but disgust. You raised me to be honest and trustworthy, I said. You taught me that family was supposed to support each other, not steal from each other. You taught me that I should always tell the truth, while you spent 5 years lying to my face. I pulled my hand away from hers. You don't love me, I continued. You love my money. You love how easy it was to manipulate me. You love how trusting and stupid I was. But you don't love me. That's not true, she said, tears streaming down her face. Then why did you do it? I asked. If you love me, why did you steal from me? If you love me, why did you laugh about it? If you love me, why did you call me an idiot behind my back? She had no answer. I'll need your decision today, David said. We can either proceed with the criminal charges immediately, or you can agree to full restitution, and we can discuss a plea agreement. My father looked at my mother, then at Jennifer, then back at me. What exactly would full restitution involve? Margaret opened her folder and pulled out another document. You would need to surrender the house. It was purchased with a down payment that came from Emily's stolen money. You would need to surrender both cars that were purchased in the last 3 years. Jennifer would need to return all jewelry and designer items purchased with stolen funds. You would need to liquidate your investment accounts and turn over all cash assets. That's everything, Jennifer said quietly. That's our whole life. No, I said. That's my whole life. That's the life you stole from me. Even with full asset liquidation, Margaret continued, there would still be a balance of approximately $470,000. That would need to be paid back with interest over time. And if we agree to this, Emily won't press charges? My father asked. David looked at me. We had discussed this possibility, but the decision was ultimately mine. I thought about it for a long moment. I thought about the 5 years of lies, the laughter, the complete betrayal of trust. I thought about how they had called me an idiot, how they had stolen my financial security, how they had been planning to buy a beach house with my money. I'll consider reduced charges, I said finally. But there will still be charges. You can't steal nearly $1 million and walk away with no consequences. What kind of reduced charges? My mother asked. Felony fraud with a recommendation for probation instead of prison time, Detective Johnson said. You'd have criminal records, but you probably wouldn't serve jail time if you comply with full restitution. My family looked at each other. They were trapped, and they knew it. We need time to think about it, my father said. You have until Monday, David replied. If you don't agree to full restitution by Monday morning, we'll be filing charges for the full amount with a recommendation for maximum sentencing. The meeting ended with my family walking out in stunned silence. I watched them leave, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. These were people I had loved, people I had trusted completely, people I had considered my closest allies in life. But they had made their choice 5 years ago when they decided to steal from me. Now I was making mine. Over the weekend, I moved all of my belongings out of the guest house and into Ethan's apartment. I couldn't stand the thought of spending another night on their property. On Monday morning, my phone rang. It was my father. We'll agree to your terms, he said quietly. Full restitution, asset liquidation, and the reduced charges. Smart choice, I said. The legal process took 6 months to complete. During that time, I watched my family's life completely fall apart. They had to sell the house and move into a small apartment. They had to surrender both cars and buy a used sedan. Jennifer had to return thousands of dollars worth of jewelry and designer clothes. My parents had to liquidate their retirement accounts and their investment portfolios. Most importantly, they all had to plead guilty to felony fraud charges. They each received 3 years probation, community service, and permanent criminal records. The total amount recovered was $542,000 in cash and assets. The remaining $490,327 was structured as a payment plan that would take them 15 years to complete, assuming they could maintain the monthly payments. During those 6 months, none of them tried to contact me directly. I heard through mutual friends that they were telling people I had overreacted and that it was all a misunderstanding. Some relatives took their side, saying that family should forgive family and that I was being too harsh. I didn't care. I had learned the hard way that not everyone who shares your blood has your best interests at heart. The day the settlement was finalized, I got a call from Jennifer. It was the first time any of them had contacted me since the meeting in David's office. "Emily," she said, and I could hear that she was crying. "I'm so sorry. We're all so sorry. We never meant for it to go this far." "You never meant to get caught," I corrected her. "That's not true," she said. "We love you. We miss you. Can't we find a way to fix this?" I thought about her question. Could we fix this? Could I ever trust them again? Could I ever look at them without remembering how they had laughed about stealing from me? "Jennifer," I said, "do you understand what you did to me?" "We took some money," she said. "We know it was wrong, but..." "You didn't take some money," I interrupted. "You stole my future. You stole my financial security. You stole 5 years of my life where I could have been building wealth instead of wondering why I couldn't get ahead." "We can pay you back," she said desperately. "With what money?" I asked. "You spend it? It's gone. Even if you make every payment for the next 18 years, you'll still never be able to give me back the 5 years you stole from me." "So that's it?" she asked. "We're not family anymore?" "We stopped being family the day you decided to steal from me," I said. "We stopped being family the day you called me an idiot. We stopped being family the day you chose money over love." I hung up the phone. That was 2 years ago. My parents and Jennifer have made exactly 14 of their required monthly payments. They've missed 4 payments, and according to David, they're already behind on their restitution schedule. I've never spoken to any of them since that phone call with Jennifer. I used the recovered money as a down payment on a beautiful house in a neighborhood across town. Ethan and I got engaged last year, and we're planning our wedding for next spring. We've built a life together based on honesty, trust, and mutual respect, things I now know are precious and rare. I still work at the same ethernetting firm, but I've been promoted twice and now manage my own team. I've also started a side business helping people who have been victims of financial fraud. It turns out that family financial abuse is more common than most people realize, and my experience has helped me guide others through the process of recovery and justice. Some people think I was too harsh with my family. They say that blood is thicker than water, that family should forgive family, that I should have handled it privately instead of involving lawyers and police. But I know something those people don't understand: real family doesn't steal from you. Real family doesn't laugh about your pain. Real family doesn't spend 5 years systematically betraying your trust while calling you an idiot behind your back. The family I was born into showed me their true nature when they thought I wasn't listening. The family I've chosen, Ethan, my close friends, my mentor David, even my forensic accountant Margaret, who has become a good friend, has shown me what real loyalty and love look like. I sleep well at night knowing I made the right choice. I have my financial security back, I have people in my life who truly care about me, and I have the satisfaction of knowing that actions have consequences. My sister was right about one thing in that conversation I overheard: I am smart enough to figure it out. I figured out exactly who they really were, and I figured out exactly how to make them pay for it. And despite what they thought, I was never too stupid to check my accounts. I was just too trusting to believe that the people I loved would ever betray me so completely. But I learned. And I made sure they learned too. The last I heard, my parents were working part-time jobs to try to keep up with their restitution payments. Jennifer was living in a studio apartment and working at a retail store. They lost their nice cars, their comfortable house, their financial security, and their family reputation. They got exactly what they deserved. As for me, I got something better than revenge. I got justice. I got my money back. I got my life back. And I got the satisfaction of knowing that the family idiot was smart enough to destroy them all.